last learning target that we're covering that has to do with trig ratios is using them to find a missing angle. And what when you're going to have to do this is anytime you are don't have one of the two acute angles to start out. And it's actually easier than finding side lengths because it's just get the ratio and then hit the right buttons on the calculator. So again, SOHCAHTOA is outlined really well in this Prezi. Check it out. And like I said, you're going to be hitting the second button or or the a sine, a cosine, a tangent on Chromebook calculators. I'll show you that in a second. But you're using the inverse trig ratios to find these angles. The inverse trig ratios, all they are is if I solve for an angle measurement, I'm going to cancel out the trig ratio with the -1 exponent of it, the inverse of it. So tangent is, if I'm at A, tangent is opposite BC over adjacent. I'm going to find those numbers and put them in and hit some buttons on a calculator. Sine, opposite BC over hypotenuse, AB. If I'm at A, cosine, AC is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, again, AB. So a quick example of this, if I am finding the bigger angle in this triangle, 4 is the bigger side, the bigger angle's opposite. 3 is the smaller side, the smaller angle's opposite. And then that's why I'm using B for big, S for small. So if I know the opposite in hypotenuse, I'm going to use sine -1/4 this, opposite over hypotenuse. If I know the adjacent in hypotenuse, I'm going to do cosine -1 of 3 adjacent over hypotenuse 5. And if I know the opposite 4 and the adjacent 3, I'm going to use tangent -1. And if I use any of these, I'm going to get 53.13 degrees when I type in 4 divided by 5. And then again, get to the inverse trig ratio on phone calculators. Those are the exact keystrokes. I'll be showing you on a Chromebook here real shortly in a quick story problem. If I'm finding the smaller angle, ultimately what you should see, the 3/5 that was cosine for B, it's now sine. What was sine for B, sine -1, is now cosine -1 of S. So it's just those fractions switch. And then for tangent, it's the reciprocal because from S, what's opposite? 3. What's adjacent? 4. And what's the hypotenuse? 5. And again, you're going to take those buttons and hit that on. Those are the keystrokes on your phone calculator. And then one last thing to point out, if I take 53.13 degrees and 36.87 degrees, and I've rounded them correctly and I add them back up, I get 90 degrees, which is the remaining 90 degrees plus the 90 that we already knew because it's a right triangle to get to 180 in the triangle. And that's a way of checking things. So what's that look like in Khan Academy? You might get a story problem such as this, and it's what's this angle here? What's this angle of elevation? And be able to round it to the nearest tenth of a degree. So obviously, this is an isosceles triangle, but if I cut the isosceles in half, much like a previous lesson, 30 divided by 2 gives me 15. 15 is adjacent to this missing angle, and 17 is the hypotenuse. So I need to use cosine of some number, some angle measurement I don't know, equals 15 over 17. So the keystrokes on a Chromebook calculator, you're going to go 15 divided by 17. Now that's the ratio of every 0.88 units on the adjacent leg equals 1 full unit on the hypotenuse. And now the inverse, again, it's hit the second button if you're using a phone calculator. If you're using the Chromebook calculators, again, radian mode bad, degree mode good. You're going to hit a cosine, and that's 28.07. And then real quick before we go forward, if I do 15 divided by 17 and hit a sine, that's not a number. I need to do 15 divided by 17 first. And then if I hit a sine of that, I get 61.92. That would round to 61.93. That would round to 28.07. 28.1 and 61.9 if I round to the nearest tenth. If I add those up, that's going to be 90. And just to prove it, hit plus, copy, paste. There's my 90. So I know I'm correct. So again, 28.1 is rounded to the nearest tenth. I think that's what the directions said. Go back and look at Khan Academy and prove that I'm correct. Yep. Type in the 28.1 and hit check. So there you go. You should be set now to try everything this week. Please do your best. If you have questions, make sure you, as always, email me, let me know, talk to me, and schedule a meeting.